You have 30 seconds. That's it. That's what a lithium fire gives you. Not 30 seconds to fight it. You can't fight a lithium fire. It generates its own oxygen. You cannot smother it. You cannot put it out. You have 30 seconds to get out of the boat. The companionway is 10 feet away. The life raft is stored right on top of it. The EPIRB is mounted right next to it, close enough to grab on the way out. That was always the plan, but now you can't get to them. The cabin is already in an inferno, and the companionway is already a chimney. The boat is gone. Get in the dinghy. They make it off the boat, they watch as it sinks into the sea, and they sit in an inflatable dinghy in the North Atlantic, invisible, untracked, with no way to call for help. And they wait for a rescue that has no idea they exist. What I'm going to share with you today, these lessons, cost 2 people their lives. I invite you to watch this without judgment for the captain and crew, but with an open mind to learn what failed and how to set your boat up so this doesn't happen to you. Before I get into what happened, I need to tell you who these people were, because it's easy to watch a tragedy from the outside and turn it into a case study, and I don't want to do that. They had a YouTube channel. I've spent time watching it, probably more than I should have. It's hard for me to watch because every time I see her on screen, she reminds me of my mom. She's warm and happy, and they're genuinely in love with the life they've built together. And they did what most of us only talk about. They untied the dock lines. They were a unique couple. On June 10th, 2024, the sailing vessel Theros left Halifax bound for the Azores. 2 people on board, and that's normally around an 18-day passage, plus or minus 3. 3 days later, they were 34 nautical miles southwest of Sable Island. This is an area also known as the graveyard of the Atlantic. Their AIS signal went dark at 12:21 in the afternoon. The boat was never found. On July 10th, 4 weeks later, Parks Canada staff found the crew on the south side of Sable Island. They had washed ashore in their inflatable dinghy. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada investigated, and their conclusion was that the data collected is, and I quote, consistent with an occurrence involving a fire on board. Not confirmed, consistent with. This is the language of accident investigations. They don't want to or can't jump to conclusions. But here's what we know for certain. One of the crew was wearing a flotation suit that had been melted down the entire left side, top to bottom, while they were wearing it. You cannot put a suit on in that condition, and that was noted in the report. The fire happened while they had it on, and that tells us enough. Here's what I believe happened. The sailing vessel Theros had been refitted with an electric propulsion system using an electric car battery as its heart. The TSB report doesn't specify the make or the chemistry, just electric car battery. And honestly, it doesn't really matter what car model it came from. What matters is this. Certain lithium chemistries found in car batteries are significantly more volatile than what we use in the marine world. Any lithium system, even marine-grade batteries, can enter thermal runaway if the BMS system isn't right. That's the battery management system. I believe that's what happened here. A charging event or something the BMS miswired or missed, or maybe a broken wire or a missing temperature sensor, and these batteries entered what's known as thermal runaway. By that time, it was already too late. A lithium fire is not a fire in the way you're picturing. This is a self-sustaining chemical reaction generating its own oxygen, and it burns at roughly 2,000 degrees. The cabin goes from smoky to blazing inferno in seconds, not minutes, seconds. And the companionway, because that's where all the oxygen is, becomes this inferno of fire. So we already know that somebody was found with a melted flotation suit, and that tells me that there was somebody in the fire facing it. I believe they were trying to fight it. I think that when you live on a boat and you build your own power grid and you make your own water, your first instinct is to try and save it. your brain isn't weighing the possibilities of this being an uncontrollable and unfightable chemical fire. You are in ultra fight or flight mode. And I think one of these crew chose to fight. That's what I would do. And I know this because I've seen it before. As a matter of fact, it just happened here, right here in the Sandblast Islands where I'm sitting right now on my boat. A catamaran called Life of Pi caught fire in the middle of the night. The family got out, but the father, Igor, went back in and he suffered severe burns over most of his body. He was evacuated to Panama City. He fought for weeks, but sadly he passed away on January 6th, 2026. And that's not even 3 months ago from the date of this publishing. His family, his widow and young child are still recovering. I'm going to put a link in the description for a fundraiser set up for them. If this story moves you and you can, please take a minute to help them out. That instinct to save your boat, your home, your life savings, it's not rational. It just goes. And sometimes it costs everything. So back to the Theros. At some point, the crew realized they cannot save the boat. The fire is going to win. And by that time, the only way off the boat is the dinghy that's tied up in the back. There is nothing else. The life raft is up in flames. The EPIRB is up in flames. They have to crawl out of the front and the back of the boat and make their way back to the dinghy, or maybe jump in the water and get back. I'm not really sure how they got in there, but they cannot go through this part of the boat. The life raft went down with the boat. The EPIRB went down with the boat. Everything except those two human beings went down. And then they sat in the dinghy and they watched their home sink into the sea. And after that, it was just silence. And that silence was so complete because they didn't get anything out of the boat. According to the report, they had a satellite communicator on board. Those are those little devices that automatically transmit your position to a website. And they even had somebody watching that from land. And that person did everything right. When they noticed that the position hadn't updated, they called the Joint Rescue Coordination Center, but without a formal float plan and hard overdue time, the JRCC couldn't treat the silence as an emergency. Their hands were tied. That call came on June 18th, 5 days after they went dark, and 2 days after it takes to dive exposure out there. It's very cold. Their system that they had set up beforehand is what failed here. They survived the fire. They survived the sinking. A Garmin inReach was all they needed. A little satellite communicator, $300, a little bit of charge, one button, and they would still be alive. Here are the lessons we can take away from this tragedy. Any one of them, any single one, changes how this story ends. Lesson 1, mount your EPIRB outside with a hydrostatic release. The Theros had an EPIRB on board. That is an emergency position indicating radio beacon. They stored it exactly where most of us sailors store ours, right by the main hatch. The thought process is it's close enough to grab on the way out. If you're sinking or if your boat's on fire, if you need to abandon ship, you're going to get out that way. You put the EPIRB right where you can just grab it on the way out. Problem is, with these revolutionary new batteries that you can take down to 20% every day, effectively increasing the usable size of our battery banks, you may not get the opportunity to get out through that opening. This is a huge rewrite of the thought patterns of sailors over the last 40 years. The answer is a Category 1 EPIRB with a hydrostatic release mounted on the outside of the boat. So when the boat goes 2 meters underwater, the housing opens up automatically, the EPIRB floats to the surface, it activates, it transmits your position, it gets a hold of search and rescue satellites, whether you're conscious, whether you're burned, whether you're floating away from it, it notifies someone. These things are $800 or $900 on Amazon. Go and buy one right now. And while you're at it, register it. It's free, it's 15 minutes online, and a registered EPIRB tells rescue authorities exactly who you are, what your boat looks like, where you were going. There's just no reason not to. That EPIRB would have been screaming their position while they were still alive in that dinghy. That would have saved their life, that little $800 thing. Lesson 2, the float plan and the hard overdue time. A concerned friend in this situation called the Coast Guard 5 days after the signal went dark. The Coast Guard couldn't fully act. There was no formal sailing plan, no defined check-in schedule, no hard overdue time. Without those things, the absence of communication isn't legally an emergency. It's just silence. The boat wasn't considered overdue for 3 weeks. A float plan is the document that gives search and rescue permission to come and get you. And it lives with your shoreside commander, whatever person you delegate on land, with the specific instructions that if you go dark or you don't check in, they file that, they call it in, they send that in, and it has 4 things on it. The vessel, name, registration, what it looks like from the air, the souls on board, who's there, any medical conditions, the survival gear, life raft, dinghy, color, what emergency equipment you have, and the hard overdue time, your route, your destination, and the exact moment your shoreside commander should pick up the phone and call it in. Not if they feel like it moment. If you don't hear from me by noon on Tuesday, you call the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard Auxiliary has templates. I'll put them in the description. The Boat US has an app, and it's 30 minutes of work before you go on passage. If the Theros had had a float plan, that search would have started while they were still alive. Lesson 3, 10 gallons of water. I'm sure you've heard before that you can survive 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, and 3 minutes without air. The only thing confirmed in that dinghy was an exposure suit. In the North Atlantic in June, dehydration and exposure become a math problem. And eventually, the math is going to run out. I keep 10 gallons of fresh water in my aft lazarette, 5 seconds to reach it, easy to get it before you get off the boat. It's the last thing to go down. If you don't have storage in the aft side of your boat, take 2 Scepter tanks. Those are my favorite tanks. Fill them with water and just lash them to your lifelines in the back. Change them out before every major passage. Water doesn't really go bad. It just tastes funny. Luckily, I've never had to use them, but I still check them every single time before I leave on a major passage. Lesson 4, the ditch bag with communications. Okay, I want you to think about where you store, or where you would store if you don't have a boat, your ditch bag. Is it going to be near the companionway, just like that EPIRB, so when it turns into a chimney from a fire, you can't access it? Or is it going to be back in a back lazarette, or maybe under the seats in the cockpit, or maybe in your bedroom somewhere? Just make sure that every single person on board knows where that is and can get that bag within 30 seconds in the dark and with smoke in the cabin. And also, super important, it needs a communication layer inside it. The gold standard is an Iridium Go with a charged phone and a battery pack. If you can keep those things in there, you can make phone calls from the life raft. The mid-tier here would be the Garmin InReach that has live position tracking, 2-way messaging, and an SOS button, so you can text people, but you can't talk to them. The baseline, the absolute minimum, is a personal locator beacon, or PLB. This is one button. It operates on the same frequency as your EPIRB, and preferably you have an EPIRB that went off when the boat sunk, and this PLB in your ditch bag that also goes off right next to it. So the search and rescue sees 2 emergency beacons. They don't really have to ask questions about that. I've said it before, and I'll say it again right here. A Garmin InReach, $300, a little bit of charge, they'd be alive. Lesson 5, the battery. I deliberately saved this one for last because the battery sank the boat, but the battery's not what killed them. What killed them was everything else that we just talked about. No exterior EPIRB, no float plan, no comms, no water. Change any one of those things and they survive. I recently interviewed Nigel Calder about DIY lithium systems. And if you don't know who Nigel Calder is, he literally wrote the book on marine electrical systems. And his position is simple. He recommends that nobody build their own lithium battery system on a boat. And I know who I'm talking to here. I know that some of you guys probably have home-built lithium systems. We're all DIY people. So let me give you the nuance rather than just tell you not to do it. Car batteries are designed for cars. They're lightweight, they're very high energy density, they're built for range, and that's the trade that manufacturers make. On a boat, you're not trying to win a drag race. You need something that fails slowly, not in 30 seconds. And that's why lead acid batteries have been around so long. It's 100-year-old technology because it's stable and it's pretty difficult to blow them up. Fast forward to today, and everybody's putting lithium in their boats. Most of us are using lithium iron phosphate, or LiFePO4. It's a more stable chemistry. It's a much higher thermal threshold before runaway, but it's still not perfect. No lithium is perfect. You can still blow them up. You can still light them on fire, but they give you more margin. It's harder to do that. There's one more angle that doesn't get talked about a lot. If you're using salvaged or used batteries or batteries with an unknown history, like say somebody says, hey man, I just changed out my batteries. I think these are still good. Would you like them? Just understand what you might actually have. If there was an impact that happened on the boat or in the car or wherever these batteries were stored and you don't see it, it could be an internal hemorrhage or damage to the cell. And if water gets into the boat, which happens, and you get it into one of those compromised cells, now you have a chemistry problem on top of the flooding problem. And lithium, if it gets wet, it can just spontaneously combust. Never, ever, ever use damaged lithium batteries in your boat. I've been offered swollen ones. I've been offered lightning damaged ones. Never take it. It's a horrible idea. And if you're going to build your own system, and I know some of you really want to or will or have that, here's what Nigel and I both agree on. Keep some margin on your charging profiles, and then build a bigger system than you think you need. And the most important thing when you're building your own DIY system is the temperature monitoring. This is an absolute must. It's the first thing you design into the system. You need a sensor on every cell group, and you need a BMS with the authority and the power to shut down that charging source the moment the temperature spikes. If you're running 3 ACs and your generator, and the ACs are all direct current ACs, they're pulling all of that power out of the batteries while the generator is putting in 12,000 watts at one time into your batteries, and it's going to make them hot, and it's going to degrade over time. It's not a good thing. This is how you push your batteries into thermal runaway. Now, I don't think that the Theros had air conditioning. I think that their situation was different. Maybe they had a damaged cell or a missing temperature sensor or a mismatched BMS or something. And it really doesn't matter, the specifics. It's the pattern that we have to watch for. And the pattern is this. We are putting more and more energy into these boats, and we are not always putting the right safeguards around it. Lithium can be dangerous. Get a professional to help you, at least help you design the thing. There are certain things on a boat you don't cut corners on. Your standing rigging, your through hulls, and your battery system. These companies that build marine batteries spend serious money matching the BMS to the chemistry and testing every cell and purposefully putting them into thermal runaway so they can see how they can safeguard against that. That's not something you can replicate with a salvaged car battery and a YouTube tutorial. I know that's not what you guys want to hear, but I'd rather you be annoyed at me than be sitting in a dinghy. I'm going to say it one more time. If you're going to go lithium, have it professionally installed. Or at a minimum, sit down with a licensed marine electrician before you touch a single cell. Show them your plans and let them find out what you missed. Because what you missed might be the thing that gives you 30 seconds. At sea, a battery system with no brain telling it to stop is a 30-second window you won't see coming. Okay, I want to be clear just one more time. I am not here to judge these people. They were sailors. They had the courage to actually go, to untie the lines and to leave. And that takes something most people will never find in themselves. But the sea, unfortunately, doesn't grade on courage. Before every passage, I run through this list. EPIRB mounted outside and registered, a float plan with a hard overdue time, 10 gallons of water, a ditch bag with comms. I have a Garmin InReach inside that bag, and a shoreside commander who knows everything. And before you even go, a battery system with a temperature monitor and a BMS that someone who knows lithium has signed off on. We owe it to the crew of the Theros to learn what they couldn't come home and teach us. We're always learning, always growing. Never lose that humility, or I promise you, the ocean will smack you back into practicing your bowlines. Fair winds, be safe. I'll see you on the next one.